creating nature is the ultimate luxury, which it kind of is if you think about it. Hi everyone, welcome to this new video. I am at Riverwood Aquatics today and we are going to aquascape this beautiful Aquascape Scapeline 100, measuring 100 centimetres by 50 by 50 centimetres, holds around 250 litres or 60 US gallons or so. Quite unique, it has low iron glass, very minimal silicone work, but what really stands out is the mitered corners here. So rather than having them kind of perpendicular, you have this beautiful 45-degree join, which actually just looks really nice. Cabinet is a beautiful matte grey, very trendy, soft close hinges, slidable drawer for your Biomaster filtration here, and some really cool magnetic tool holders there. We have Biomaster 600 running on a mature system over there, which is going to help obviously mature the whole aquarium right from the get-go. Using soil, which may contribute to some ammonia, but the mature filter will help with that, and the plant growth as well will minimise any impact of that ammonia. Lighting is a Chihiros WRGB2 Pro, so fully controllable with an app. Big fan of the Chihiros lights actually. They've come a long way in the last few years. Excited to create another beautiful work of a living art here in this amazing store in Assington in England. Highly recommended. Start off with this amazing piece of wood. Is this Redmore root? Azalea wood. It's stunning. There's so many kind of interwoven branches where we can wedge any necessary epiphyte plants. This is the blank canvas, obviously in 3 dimensions, and then we have our kind of most important focal point really. So it's really kind of worth spending a lot of time and attention figuring out exactly how we want to position it. So when people come into the store, they see the Scapeline 100 straight away, but they come in from kind of this angle here. So in my mind, it makes sense to have a triangular layout. So starting off with foreground, kind of building up to backgrounds at the back left. So with that in mind, we can kind of visualise what the best way to position it. How did you come up with Riverwood? It's a lovely name.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I thought that's a nice name. Fits the vibe of aquascaping.
So we don't want the actual wood to be touching the glass anywhere because we need to keep the glass clean, of course. If you don't have the options of using one magnificent piece of wood like this, you can always use multiple smaller pieces, combine them together to create hopefully a coherent design. Something similar to this. So don't be afraid if you go into your local aquarium store and they don't have, you know, a piece like this. I have to say most aquarium shops wouldn't have something so beautiful, but you can make something similar, like I say, just by combining pieces together, and you can either glue them together, kind of cable tie them, however you wish. Just be mindful that you want the overall aesthetic to kind of flow. Ideally, we're creating like a natural style aquarium today, nature aquarium style. Pete's had a really good idea to actually just shift the wood a touch. So we're actually going to let it kind of flow down from the back left towards the front right, and that is actually in keeping more with the triangular layout, and in particular with the stones we're using, because we're trying to create this kind of dynamic feel of flow. And these beautiful rocks here, what are these called, Pete?
Titan boulders.
Titan boulders, these Weo?
Yeah.
So these, in my mind, these kind of look like they're from a fast flowing stream. They've kind of got this erosion here, actually very characterful as well. So got this beautiful kind of mottled light grey, dark grey. It will look even more beautiful once it's wet, obviously be shiny. And we've got 3 lovely pieces to use. And it makes sense to put the biggest one in first. Quite heavy, isn't it? The really dense stone.
Yeah.
So they're kind of supporting, you can just see that through there. We might not see it once the plants are grown in, but that's no problem. We'll get a couple more. When we're choosing our stones, we kind of want to make them kind of all look similar in their form. Otherwise it doesn't look so natural. Tucking one in there, Pete, might look nice.
Yeah.
Perfect. A little bit of detailing towards the back right, same sort of concept. We're working in a a 3D canvas with 3D objects, and the idea is, think of it like an infinitely unsolvable jigsaw puzzle, and you're just trying to do the best job you can to make it look as natural as possible. And you can keep playing around, you know, to your heart's content at this stage. It's better to do lots of effort and attention at this stage rather than rushing it and then regretting it later and then having to make a big mess and readjusting things later. Potted plants here. Some of the guys are preparing some foreground carpeting species at the moment. That's basically mini hairgrass. But I just wanted to talk you through some of the epiphytes and the stems that we've got here. Starting off with this beautiful kind of small wavy Bucophalangia bibilis. It will get a little bit longer and bigger leaves than this, but it's, as with most Bucophalangias, very beautiful, slow growing. Has a real nice iridescent sheen to it in good lighting, which we'll have in here, of course. So I've got 3 pots of that. And then we've got some Bulbitis hoodalottii. This is really going to look great in here. It really kind of accentuates this flow that we've got, and it actually grows very well in fast flowing water as well, so it kind of gives that vibe. Does like more light, prefers softer water, but with CO2 injected aquariums it will grow fine with hard water. So I've got a couple of pots of that, and then a classic instant focal point, a couple of pots of the trident fern here. Again, this is an epiphyte, so we'll just wedge this in one of the beautiful kind of crevices where the branches are crossing over. We don't need to use any glue today or string or anything like that to attach those, nice and easy. And then moving on to Hydrocotyle tripartita. This is quite unique. You can grow it as a carpeting plant or a stem plant, but you can also grow it as an epiphyte plant. And in my mind, this looks like an ivy, like an epiphytic ivy. Which gives this really nice kind of terrestrial vibe, and we can actually train it to kind of almost grow around the roots here, so it will look really beautiful over time. And then finally our stem plants, we've got some fast growing weeds here. This is Hygrophila polysperma, classic, easy, it side shoots readily, responds very well to trimming. And we want to plant at least some species of fast growing, and this will help combat algae issues, which we often get in new aquariums. Then moving on to some colourful stem plants here, we've got the Ludwigia super red, similar growth formation actually to the Hygrophila, but as you can see, it's beautiful red coloration, and with more intense light we'll gain a much more intense red colour. We also have some Rotala rotundifolia HRAR in the Tropical 1-2 grow. So it's going to be a very beautiful high impact red and green kind of dense formation in the back. And because of the nature of stem plants, we can almost use like topiary and trim them in accordance with what we wish. So it would make sense to kind of have them growing up to the tall left here and then sloping down to the right here. Here we have, these are tissue cultured Eleocharis parvula. It grows like all Eleocharis, carpets, forms under substrate runners and eventually form a solid formation. We do have some Eleocharis minima. I think it's roughly the same species. So similar to the parvula, but it grows much more kind of vertically. The parvula tends to kind of curl over on itself. So by mixing these textures, it's going to look really natural. What we don't want to necessarily do in a nature aquarium is have the same monotonous texture running through. We like to kind of mix up the textures slightly just to give it more of a natural feel. And with that in mind, we've got this beautiful Hydrocotyle verticillata. It kind of, when it's mature, it looks a bit kind of tangled up and ugly at the moment, but it does grow quite vertical kind of stems with like a mushroom coin at the top of each stem. So that planted intermittently around this solid hair grass is just going to look great. In my mind, it's going to look like little mushrooms popping up through a beautiful meadow. So there we have all the plants so far. Probably won't attach any moss at this early stage. I like to add moss after a couple of months or so once the scapes mature. We often get like a biofilm building up on the wood, and like I say, algae is quite prominent in the early stages. So best to add moss later on if we do want moss. If you have limited quantity of plants and you absolutely want to get a really even coverage, number one is to split it up into tiny individual portions. We haven't got time for that today, but if you're at home and you're on a limited budget and you only want to plant 1 or 2 pots and get really good coverage, just split it up loads, and then to get even coverage, plant one portion one end of the tank, one on the other, and then one in between, and then keep doing that, dividing it up halfway each time, and then you get guaranteed even coverage. I'm just going to plant these literally randomly because that's almost how it would happen in nature. We don't want to kind of keep it too rigid and uniform, otherwise it just doesn't look natural. What I might think about doing, if we've got options for other plant species, is actually have a transitional plant going from the really short hair grass to the rocks. Although the rocks do look beautiful, we don't really want to cover them up so much. So I think for now we'll just stick to the hair grass. So this will need relatively good light in order to carpet well, good CO2 injection. Inline CO2 on here with a Biomaster 600, it's going to give us plenty of circulation. Ooh. Sometimes when you withdraw your tweezers, the plant wants to come out at the same time, so you can just pop your finger on top, then withdraw your tweezers, and then the plant stays there. There's always a risk to floating plants once you add the water. We can just replant those, but don't be afraid to insert the plant quite deep to make sure it grips, and then that's going to anchor it fully, and then the soil is going to feed the plant roots. And the soil is really great as well. It acts as a home for beneficial bacteria because of its porous structure, and it also reduces the pH and the hardness as well. So this makes the water chemistry more suitable for most fish and shrimps, etc. Now, if I've got any volunteers and there's an extra pair of tweezers, Josh, Rag and Bone Man's here, guest appearance again. Some of you may recognise Josh from previous videos. He's actually got a beautiful 90 centimetre scape up and running, recently set up, so I'm doing a video with Josh again. And now this is the hydrocotyl verticillata. We can separate this into individual plants. As you can see, it's kind of growing along a long runner, and you can literally just tear it off and then just plant your individual plantlets just randomly amongst the hair grass there. This will also carpet as well, so it's going to be a case of just watching it grow. Hopefully it won't need too much maintenance, this carpet. Probably won't need any trimming or thinning out for a good 3 months or so. The hydrocotyl can grow quite a little bit taller than what you see there, so it could potentially go to sort of 10, maybe even 15 centimetres tall, depending on the conditions. It's actually regarded as an advanced plant, so it will need good light and CO2 injection to get the most from it. So this event is supported by Awase, who I'm representing today, hence my lovely polo shirt. And it's always great to work with these lovely aquariums. The Scapoline 100 is their biggest in the range of Scapolines. It is a luxury aquarium, it's quite a high price point, but you do get what you pay for, in my experience. You get these lovely touches like the 45-degree corner mitered joins, and also the really high quality cabinet with all the lovely little touches. And if it is, out of some people's budgets, but you can still, the aim of this video is to show you how to aquascape, and you can use these concepts, no matter what aquarium you're using. So just spraying the plants now just to stop them from drying out. This is the most important with tissue culture plants, where they've adapted to grow in a liquid. So if they do dry out, it can potentially damage the plant tissue. It's not so much of an issue with potted plants that have been grown hydroponically out of water, because they're pretty much adapted to grow in air. But if you have tissue culture plants, definitely keep them wet. And it's a good practice anyway, just to keep everything kind of moist. And it also helps just when you do fill up with water at the end, helps to keep those plants anchored, hopefully. Some people will actually deliberately fill up the water, maybe just a few inches or so, and plant into wet soil. I find this is just a bit messier, and I find I get more floaters that way. So this way is just safer. It's a method that I've been using for many years, but you just do need to make sure the plants don't dry out too much. Do you plant dry, Josh?
Yeah.
Anything else going dry here? What sort of CO2 rate do you put in there, Pete? How many bubbles a second?
Probably be 3-ish.
Yeah, generally speaking, you need more fertilisers and more CO2 the harder you water. Now time to plant our stem plants and epiphytes. I think I'm going to start off with the smallest epiphytes and then to the biggest, and then we'll go to stems in the back. So let's go for the Bucophalandra biblis. One giant clump at the moment. What I'm going to do is just separate that a little bit more so each plant has a little bit more access to the circulating water and CO2. What can happen if you do plant, in particular Bucophalandra for some reason, if you do plant it and it's too kind of a condensed mass, you can kind of get melt, and I think it's because some of the plant doesn't have access, like I say, to circulating water. A lot of epiphytes, the reason that they are epiphytes is they actually will rot in anaerobic conditions. So it makes sense that's why it's rotting, if it's kind of smothering itself because it's got no access to oxygen. So what I'm going to do there is there's a beautiful kind of pop that in there maybe. Oh, that's not quite as tight as I was hoping. Have you got any super glue? So we only need a little tiny bit of super glue. It does look very ugly if you can see it. It goes with a very bright white colour. But what we can do is just pop that there. And then that's perfect. And then we're just looking now for other ideal spots where we can position the plant. There's a nice little wedge bit there. It's quite a new plant to the hobby. It's only been commonly available in the last 5-10 years. And it's a bit controversial because in nature it grows in Borneo. It's the only country it grows in the wild. And Borneo is under a lot of kind of, what should I say, intensive farming. So they're destroying a lot of natural habitats in order for palm oil production mainly. And as a consequence of that, a lot of the Bucophalandras are dying off in the wild. And it's quite controversial if you're buying kind of wild Bucophalandra because it's basically part of quite a rare habitat. So we always encourage hobbyists to buy Bucophalandra that has been propagated in greenhouses or even better in tissue culture laboratories where it's absolutely had no impact on the wild stocks. It's a bit different to Anubias. Anubias prefers to grow really in the shade. And although Bucophalandra will grow in the shade, it does appreciate a bit more light and you'll really get these beautiful colours in the leaves. Okay, next plant, Bulboitis hudilottii, native to Africa, commonly known as the African water fern. This has been grown hydroponically, so it will actually change its leaf form quite significantly once it's grown underwater and it's underwater form. What happens is the kind of matte finish, it's kind of semi-adapted already actually, but when you get it fresh from a greenhouse, it has a very kind of matte green finish. As it adapts to underwater growth, it becomes more of a translucent green, very, very beautiful, and the serrated leaves become more apparent as well. It's not the easiest of plants, so if you have CO2 injection, it will definitely appreciate that. And it will definitely appreciate some flow as well, so do bear that in mind. Now I think there's a beautiful spot there. And just tuck that in here. It's just such an easy wood to work with. I really enjoy just tucking the plants in as if they were meant to be there. It does like quite a bit of light, so there's no harm in putting it towards the light surface there. And actually, as with most plants, the more intense the light, the more compact and attractive the growth as well. But you do need to match that with decent CO2 management. The issue is with too much light and not enough CO2 is it tends to promote algae, because algae can use the light more than the plants can if there's no CO2 apparent. Okay, next one is a trident fern. That's going to look really lovely, kind of mixed in the textures. with the bulbitis. And as you can see already, just adding these epiphyte plants or attaching plants, it just really helps to achieve this kind of more mature look straight away, as if, you know, it's like mimicking a underwater kind of vibe, like a fallen log with plants that are naturally kind of attaching themselves, like you might find in a forest or something. Moving on to our hydrocotyle, so tripartita. This we're going to use as an epiphyte and attaching plant again, and this is going to hopefully mimic the effect of like an ivy creeping over the wood. It really is a weed once this gets going, so you can just trim it to your heart's desire. It doesn't really need any special care, especially in a high energy tank like this with good light and CO2, but it will need kind of managing aesthetically in order to prevent it kind of overtaking too much, depending on your, you know, the style. There is quite a kind of empty space around here. Our original idea was to put the trident fern here, but I've already got it here, which is okay, because what I'm going to do is just wedge the tripartita in here, and under good lighting that's actually going to kind of cascade downwards like a kind of waterfall effect, and we can train that as required. The next job is the stem plants. So we do have some very high impact red colours. It's important to position those appropriately. When we're looking at a composition, we don't really want to have necessarily really high impact colour on one end and the other, because your eye is naturally drawn, goes from one end to the other, backwards and forwards. It doesn't really feel settled. So we use the rule of thirds. So we basically put all of our highest impact focal points and plants off by 1/3. So I'll plant the majority of the Ludwigia super red, which is going to be the most red intense colour, around here, and then to the left and right of that the Hra, Rotala Hra, and then over to the right here Polysperma, and then intermixed between all of that the Juncus repens. So it's just going to keep the whole vibe of the scape very naturalistic. We don't want to be creating kind of formal boundaries of plants. We want to create this really lovely interwoven texture as you would find in nature. Depending on your budget, you can plant almost, you know, big bunches of the plant straight away, you know, multiple stems, or you can separate them in stem by stem if you're on a limited budget. But we've got access to lots of beautiful plants here today, so to create a kind of instant impact, we're going to plant in bunches. Again, you can push the stems quite far into the soil and they'll soon find their rooting and grow no problem, especially in such a lovely nutrient-rich environment which we'll have here, CO2 and good lighting. Moving on to our Rotala Hra. So at the moment, as you can see, this has been grown in the 1-2 cup tissue culture pots, so it's very small at the moment and green. However, it will grow quite rapidly, and as it gets used to the higher lighting levels, will turn a red, pink, red and even purple colour depending on the conditions. So although it looks very small at the moment, it will, trust me, in 4 or 5 weeks will be reaching the surface, and then it'll be ready for its first trim, and then we can replant those offcuts if required, doing the topping technique or the replanting technique, or if you don't have any room for that, you can just give the plants away or discard of them carefully. What we don't want to be doing is just throw them into any old kind of area where they may get into natural water systems, because aquarium plants actually can become invasive and choke waterways, which is not a good thing, obviously. So just be mindful of how you dispose of your aquarium plants if you do so. In a few months or so, these stems are going to kind of blend into each other, and depending on how Pete maintains them, trims them and replants, we can really take full control over the whole kind of aesthetic and how we wish the scape to develop. I guess one of the beautiful things about aquascaping, it isn't a fixed work of art. You know, it's very much a dynamic living system, and you as the creator have the control to an extent. You have the guiding hand. Nature always has the control. You just have a kind of influence on how nature wishes to take your aquascape. Takashi Amane, one of my favourite ever quotes from him was, "Creating nature is the ultimate luxury." which it kind of is if you think about it. You know, we are effectively kind of playing God, and this is our universe, and we're kind of creating it and trying to hopefully create it into something that not only looks beautiful, but become a thriving ecosystem for all the inhabitants. You know, and by giving the plants the best attention we can with good lighting, good soil, good liquid fertilizers, good filtration, CO2 injection, by default what we're doing then is allowing the plants to act as a visual impact, but also they're a great biological filter. You know, plants really love to use the waste organics that are created by the fish, the shrimp, the bacteria, any kind of waste byproduct can be used by the plants. You know, this happens in nature all the time. This is how the planet Earth kind of exists. You know, without plants, we'd all be dead. You know, they're responsible for all of the oxygen on this planet, you know, whether that's from algae in the oceans, which is a form of plant, to our fanciest orchids. You know, they're all helping photosynthesis. They're all photosynthesizing and helping to produce oxygen and to remove CO2. And we can get that kind of concept in this kind of tiny little space here. Okay, so we're fully planted. Really happy with the results. Shout out to Pete for supplying all the amazing plants, and of course Awase for the aquarium. Next job is to fill nice and slowly with water, put the filter and the CO2 on. That shouldn't take too long. But yeah, a flawless process. Thanks to all the guys for helping prepare. So we've had Gary Jones, we've had Josh Newton and Miles, and of course Pete, and welcome Sam as well. Probably get Pete to do all the equipment in his own time, and then next time I'm in the area I'll do an update video. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and leave us a comment. Of course, the classic question, Pete, what fish would we put in here? Okay, thanks for watching guys. Take care, cheerio. Spray bottle. So I'm just going to give you yeah, a bit of CO2 in there. So it just gives you an impression of how it changes the rock once it's wet. Yeah. All the way from Italy. Cheers, San Pellegrino. Oh, really? As it's not the San Pellegrino's fault. Interestingly, it does have a very unique mineral content in here, which is good for you. Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. I am at Riverwood Aquatics, and in today's video we're going to aquascape this beautiful Awase Scaper Line 90 and 180 litres or 50 US gallons.
Josh, it's 100. Scaper Line 100.
That's embarrassing.
Sorry. I didn't want to interrupt your flow.
Oh, the look you gave me when I interrupted you.
What? Let me check it. 100%.
No, it is.
Yeah.
I can see it is now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Well, look.
That's how not to start a video.
Well, look, let's do it now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all good fun.